Do not watch alone. Some things only strike in silence. The story begins on an unusually quiet night. The protagonist, Amna, a young woman in her mid-20s, moves into an old, isolated house on the outskirts of the city. She rents it to escape the noise and chaos of urban life, hoping to find peace and solitude. At first, the stillness seems soothing, but slowly, she senses something unsettling lurking within the walls. The house itself seems almost alive. The creaking floorboards, the faint whisper of the wind through broken windows, and the shadowy corners that never feel empty. Amna has a troubled history with sleep. She occasionally experiences sudden, terrifying dreams, but lately, these dreams have started to blur the line between imagination and reality. She is unsure if what she sees and hears at night is real or just a figment of her subconscious. The story sets up her psychological vulnerability, her loneliness, insecurities, and the faint trauma of past events, which make her susceptible to fear. The narrative also subtly introduces the house's mysterious aura. Old portraits stare blankly from dusty walls, cobwebs gather in corners, and faint, cold drafts brush against her skin even in sealed rooms. These details serve to immerse the reader into a world where reality is unstable. This introduction is crucial because it lays the foundation for the psychological and supernatural elements that follow. The house is more than a setting. It is almost a character itself, shaping Amna's fears and dreams. By the end of this section, readers should feel the sense of isolation, suspense, and underlying menace that will dominate the story. It prepares the audience for the coming events where sleep, dreams, and terror intertwine. Amna's first night in the house becomes the beginning of a series of strange, terrifying events. Around 2 a.m., she hears a faint whispering or scratching sound coming from the dark corners of her room. At first, she dismisses it as the natural noises of an old house, the wind, creaking wood, or rodents. However, as the night progresses, the sounds grow louder, more deliberate, and disturbingly human-like, yet impossible to locate. Her first dreams that night are equally disturbing. In them, the house seems alive, and shadows move independently of any logical explanation. She dreams of being watched, and in her dream, she feels someone breathing behind her, yet when she turns awake, the room is empty. This blend of dream and reality begins to confuse her. The boundary between what is imagined and what is real starts to erode, leaving Amna in a constant state of paranoia. Adding to the suspense, she notices a dark, moving silhouette in the corner of her eye. When she focuses on it, it disappears, as if the shadow is intentionally hiding. These subtle paranormal hints suggest the house harbors a presence, something unseen but undeniably watching her. This section is critical for establishing the story's psychological tension. It engages the reader's senses, sound, sight, and fear of the unknown, and heightens anticipation. By blending waking reality with dreamlike sequences, the story begins exploring themes of isolation, vulnerability, and the terror of being watched by something that cannot be confronted. Amna is no longer safe even in her own mind. The house begins asserting its power, making the reader question what is real and what is a nightmare. As the nights pass, Amna's dreams and waking life begin to merge in terrifying ways. In her dreams, she sees an old man with hollow eyes, who silently beckons her toward the attic. The details are vivid. She can smell the damp, feel the icy drafts, and hear faint murmurs of the house as though it is alive. Each night, the dream becomes longer and more detailed, and the man's gestures seem urgent, as if trying to communicate something critical. When she awakens, the house often mirrors her dream experiences. She notices subtle signs, objects slightly moved, footprints in dust, or shadows in places they shouldn't be. These uncanny parallels blur the line between dream and reality. Amna begins to question her own perception. Is she imagining these things, or is the house manipulating her mind? This constant uncertainty increases her fear and isolation, as she cannot trust her senses or her judgment. Psychologically, this section explores Amna's vulnerability and descent into paranoia. Sleep, which once offered escape, has become a battlefield where her mind is invaded by unseen forces. The reader experiences the tension of not knowing what is real, heightening empathy with Amna's terror. The dreams function as both foreshadowing and a mechanism to reveal the supernatural mystery of the house. By blending reality and dreams, the story intensifies suspense and sets the stage for the horrors to come. The house is no longer a passive setting. It actively interacts with Amna, using her fears against her. Readers feel the oppressive atmosphere of being trapped between two worlds, one waking and one nightmare, where every shadow could conceal danger and every sound might signal an unseen threat. After several nights of terrifying dreams and strange occurrences, Amna decides to uncover the history of the house. She visits the local library, speaks to neighbors, and examines old records, hoping to find answers. She learns that the house once belonged to a recluse who mysteriously vanished decades ago. Locals whisper about disappearances and strange deaths, all connected to this house. The stories speak of people being drawn into dreams they could never wake from. Armed with this knowledge, Amna becomes even more uneasy. She realizes that the presence she senses may not be just a hallucination, but something tied to the house's dark past. She starts noticing patterns. The whispers and shadows always intensify at specific times, often coinciding with the house's original owner's death anniversary. Items she sees in dreams appear in real life. The old man in her visions, the same footprints, and even fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. This part of the story deepens the mystery and horror. Amna is no longer just a victim of her imagination. She is confronting an active force. The tension escalates as she realizes that the house may be using her fears to manipulate her. Her investigation reveals clues but also increases danger. Every discovery brings her closer to understanding the entity but also closer to being consumed by it. Psychologically, this section explores the theme of fear intertwined with curiosity. The reader is drawn into Amna's obsessive need to uncover the truth, which mirrors the classic horror trope. The more one seeks answers, the closer they are to peril. By the end of this outline, the audience understands that Amna is facing a malevolent presence with a history, and the house itself is a character in the story, a living, breathing entity shaping her fate. Amna's research and restless nights culminate in her first direct encounter with the entity. One night, while exploring the attic that her dreams have consistently drawn her toward, she feels an oppressive presence. The air becomes icy, and she hears whispered warnings. You can never escape. Her heartbeat accelerates as she sees the shadowy figure of the old man from her dreams, now more distinct, standing silently in the corner. The encounter blends dream and reality. Amna tries to scream, but her voice falters. The figure doesn't move toward her immediately. Instead, it observes, as though gauging her fear. Small objects in the room tremble or float slightly, emphasizing the entity's power. Her visions become hyper-realistic. She sees past victims, blurred faces watching her from the shadows, and ghostly hands reaching for her. Every instinct tells her to flee, but the attic door slams shut as if the house itself has trapped her. This section is the story's climactic suspense. It shifts from eerie events to active confrontation. Readers feel the same dread as Amna, experiencing her terror firsthand. The entity is no longer a distant, abstract force. It is tangible, immediate, and threatening. Amna's courage and intelligence are tested as she struggles to maintain control and avoid being overwhelmed. The encounter also intensifies the psychological horror as the house manipulates her perception. Dreams bleed into reality, making every shadow a potential threat. The entity's purpose remains mysterious, creating suspense. Is it malicious for sport, bound by unfinished business, or seeking a host? This uncertainty keeps the tension high, setting the stage for the story's resolution in the next outline. Following the terrifying encounter, Amna resolves to face the entity directly. She begins preparing herself mentally and physically, lighting protective candles, reciting old incantations, and mapping the areas of the house where the presence is strongest. Her goal is to uncover the entity's intentions and survive its manipulations. The house seems to resist her. Doors slam shut, whispers grow louder, and cold drafts push her toward panic. But she steels herself against fear. In a climactic confrontation, Amna enters the basement, the epicenter of the supernatural disturbances. Shadows twist around her, forming fleeting images of the past, a visual history of the house's victims. She realizes that the entity is trapped, unable to leave, and its hostility is fueled by isolation and anger accumulated over decades. By speaking to it, acknowledging its pain, and asserting her will, Amna begins to establish control. The battle is psychological as much as physical. She uses courage and intellect to differentiate between illusion and reality. This outline emphasizes the theme of empowerment through fear. Amna's journey from terror to confrontation shows growth. She is no longer merely reacting, but taking action against the malevolent force. The narrative explores the interplay between human resilience and supernatural threats, highlighting the idea that understanding the source of fear can weaken its power. As the story nears resolution, the house responds. Shadows recede, whispering ceases, and an eerie calm settles. Amna emerges victorious but changed, carrying the haunting memory of what she endured. This outline sets the stage for the final resolution, leaving room for either a triumphant escape or a lingering sense of dread that the entity may return. The reader is left on edge, reflecting on the thin line between dreams, fear, and reality. After confronting the entity in the basement and understanding its origins, Amna finally experiences a moment of relief. The oppressive energy that had haunted the house for weeks seems to recede, as if acknowledging her courage and resilience. Shadows no longer creep in corners, whispers fade, and the air, once icy and suffocating, now feels still but calm. She begins to understand that the entity was not purely malevolent. It was a fragment of trapped souls, a lingering echo of despair and isolation. By facing it, she disrupted its cycle of fear, asserting her humanity over the supernatural presence. However, the victory is bittersweet. The house itself still retains a sense of uneasy silence, a reminder that its history is etched into its walls. While the immediate threat is gone, Amna cannot shake the feeling that she was only partially free, that some remnants of the entity might remain dormant, waiting for the next vulnerable person. The story concludes with Amna leaving the house at dawn, physically safe, but forever marked by her experience. Her perspective on fear, courage, and the unknown has irrevocably changed. Psychologically, the conclusion highlights transformation through terror. Amna emerges empowered, having faced her deepest fears, yet she carries the emotional weight of what she endured. The reader is left reflecting on the thin line between dreams and reality, and how fear can be both a prison and a teacher. The conclusion does not tie up every mystery neatly, preserving a lingering sense of suspense that is central to horror. In essence, this ending balances resolution and unease. Amna survives, proving human resilience can overcome supernatural forces, but the haunting atmosphere reminds readers that some darkness is never fully erased. The story closes with the subtle whisper that the house and the entity within may never truly let go, leaving a lasting impression of dread and fascination. If you enjoyed this horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon for more terrifying stories.